Amara checked her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. The reservation was for 7, and it was already 6:15. She still needed to finish her makeup, change into her dress, and make the 20-minute drive downtown. After 15 years of marriage, she had learned that special occasions required careful planning, especially with their busy lives constantly pulling them in different directions. From the bathroom, she could hear Daniel on the phone in their bedroom, his voice rising slightly as he discussed something about work expenses. He had been more stressed than usual lately, checking their bank statements frequently and sighing whenever bills arrived in the mail. Amara understood his concerns. They had just put a down payment on a new house and their son's college tuition payments were starting next fall. But tonight was supposed to be about them, about celebrating their journey together. "I need those numbers by Monday," Daniel said firmly, before ending the call. Amara heard him exhale heavily. She applied the last touches of mascara and stepped into the bedroom. "Everything okay?" Daniel looked up from his laptop, his frown softening when he saw her. "Just work stuff. The Thompson account is a mess." He closed his computer and stood up. "You look nice. Almost ready?" Amara nodded, reaching for the deep burgundy dress laid out on their bed. "Just need to change. Your suit is ironed and hanging in the closet." As they got dressed, Amara thought about how much had changed since their first date at Riverstone Restaurant 15 years ago. Back then, she had been a law student working part-time as a paralegal, and Daniel had just started his accounting business with nothing but determination and a small office downtown. They had both come from families where money was tight, and they had promised each other they would build something better together, and they had. Amara was now a partner at her law firm, specializing in family law. Daniel's accounting business had grown steadily, though the economic downturn had hit them harder than she liked to admit. They had weathered so much together: family conflicts, health scares, career setbacks, and the beautiful chaos of raising their son, Jordan, who was now starting his first year of college across the country. "You've been quiet all day," Daniel said as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. "Something on your mind?" Amara smiled, zipping up her dress. "Just thinking about us. 15 years is a long time." "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Daniel replied, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror. "Remember how nervous I was when I picked you up for our first date? My hands were sweating so much I could barely hold the steering wheel. And you took 3 wrong turns getting to the restaurant." Amara laughed, the memory warming her heart. "That's why I suggested you drive tonight," Daniel said with a wink. The tension that had been building between them over the past few months, arguments about expenses, disagreements about Jordan's college choices, late nights at work, seemed to ease as they reminisced. This was what tonight was about, Amara thought, remembering who they were beneath the stress and responsibilities. What Daniel didn't know was that Amara had been planning this anniversary for weeks. The reservation at Riverstone had been made a month in advance. She had coordinated with their old friends to meet them for drinks afterward. And the biggest surprise, a custom cake from Heights Bakery that recreated their wedding cake. The one element of their wedding day that had gone completely wrong when the original baker mixed up their order with another couple's. That cake had been a disaster. A gaudy, neon green monstrosity with plastic palm trees that had nothing to do with their elegant, autumn-themed wedding. They had laughed about it for years, making it part of their story. This anniversary cake was Amara's way of rewriting that small piece of their history, a symbol that they could still fix things that had gone wrong. In the car, Daniel seemed to relax. He reached over to hold Amara's hand as she drove, his thumb tracing circles on her skin the way he always did when they were dating. "I'm sorry I've been distracted lately," he said quietly. "The business has been challenging." Amara squeezed his hand. "I know, we'll figure it out together." "We always do." She wanted to tell him about the arrangement she had made with Heights Bakery. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had been a client of hers last year during a difficult property dispute. When Amara mentioned wanting to order a special anniversary cake, Mrs. Chen had insisted on creating it as a thank you for Amara's help, refusing to accept payment. Instead, Amara had agreed to help Mrs. Chen's nephew with some immigration paperwork pro bono. But Daniel had been so sensitive about money lately that Amara decided to save that explanation for when the cake arrived. She imagined his face lighting up with surprise and joy when he saw it, an exact replica of what their wedding cake should have been, with the date of their first date at Riverstone hidden in the design. The restaurant looked just as they remembered, with its stone facade and warm lights glowing from within. The maitre d' recognized Amara from her visits to plan the evening and led them to a corner table, the same one where they had sat on their first date. "You arranged this, didn't you?" Daniel asked, a genuine smile spreading across his face as he recognized the table. Amara nodded, pleased that he had noticed. "I thought it would be nice to come full circle." As they settled in, Amara noticed Daniel checking the prices on the menu, his forehead creasing slightly. She felt a twinge of worry but pushed it aside. Tonight was about celebration, not about counting dollars. "Order whatever you want," she said. "Tonight's special." Daniel looked up, hesitating before his expression softened. "Okay, but just for tonight." The evening progressed beautifully. They ordered the same appetizer they had shared on their first date, stuffed mushrooms with a garlic sauce that the restaurant was famous for. They talked about Jordan's excited phone calls from college, about the trips they hoped to take once they were more financially stable again, about the funny story Amara's assistant had told her at work. For those moments, they weren't a couple struggling with mounting expenses and growing distance. They were just Daniel and Amara, still in love after all these years, still finding things to laugh about together. When they finished their main course, Amara excused herself to the restroom, using the opportunity to confirm with the manager that the cake was ready. Mrs. Chen had delivered it personally that afternoon, and the manager assured Amara it was beautiful and waiting in the kitchen. Returning to the table, Amara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She wanted this surprise to be perfect, to remind Daniel of why they worked so well together even when life got complicated. "You look like you're plotting something," Daniel said, his eyes narrowing playfully as she sat down. Amara laughed. "Maybe I am." Just then, the lights in the restaurant dimmed slightly and the manager appeared with 2 servers behind him. On a silver tray was the cake, 3 tiers of elegant ivory frosting with delicate autumn leaves cascading down the sides, exactly as they had planned for their wedding day. At the very top, a small fondant replica of Riverstone restaurant sat like a crown. The other diners turned to look, some smiling at the obvious celebration taking place. The manager set the cake down between them with a flourish. "Happy anniversary," he announced, as the servers placed clean dessert plates in front of them. Daniel stared at the cake, recognition dawning in his eyes as he took in the details that mirrored their original wedding cake design. For a moment, Amara saw nothing but pure joy in his expression, the stress of recent months falling away. "Amara, this is—" he started, his voice thick with emotion. She reached across the table to take his hand. "I wanted to give us the cake we should have had. Better 15 years late than never, right?" Daniel laughed, shaking his head in amazement. "It's perfect. Exactly what we planned back then." He looked up at her, his eyes shining. "You always remember every detail." As the manager prepared to cut the first slice, Daniel's smile suddenly faltered. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Wait, how much did this cost? These custom cakes can be expensive." And just like that, the tension was back, hovering between them like an unwelcome guest. Amara hesitated, knowing she needed to explain about Mrs. Chen and the arrangement she had made, but also feeling a flicker of frustration that money concerns were intruding on their perfect moment. "Actually, about that," Amara said, choosing her words carefully. She could see the shift in Daniel's expression, the way his eyes narrowed slightly, the small furrow appearing between his brows. "Mrs. Chen from Heights Bakery made it. You remember her, right? The property dispute case I handled last year?" Daniel nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the elaborate cake. "The one with the shopping center trying to force her out?" "Sure, I remember, but that doesn't answer how much it cost." Around them, the soft murmur of other diners continued. A waiter passed by with a tray of drinks. The manager stood awkwardly to the side, sensing the sudden tension but unsure whether to proceed with cutting the cake. "She wouldn't let me pay for it," Amara explained, lowering her voice. "She insisted it was a thank you gift for helping her save her business. I tried, but she absolutely refused to take my money." Instead of looking relieved, Daniel's frown deepened. "So you're getting special treatment because you're her lawyer? That doesn't seem right." The manager cleared his throat. "Would you like me to give you a moment before we cut the cake?" "Yes?" Daniel said curtly at the exact moment Amara said, "No, it's fine." The manager hesitated, looking between them. "Just a minute, please." Amara said with an apologetic smile. The manager nodded and stepped away, taking the knife with him but leaving the cake on the table between them like a beautiful monument to what should have been a perfect evening. "It's not like that," Amara said once they were alone. "I'm doing her nephew's immigration paperwork pro bono. It's an exchange of services, not special treatment. And when were you going to tell me about this arrangement?" Daniel's voice was quiet but tense. "Or were you just going to let me think you spent hundreds of dollars on a fancy cake when we're trying to save for Jordan's tuition?" Amara felt a flash of irritation. "I was going to tell you tonight, obviously. I just wanted to surprise you first." "Why are you making this into a problem?" "Because we agreed to discuss any expenses over $100, and you've been making financial decisions without talking to me for months now." Daniel's voice rose slightly, causing a couple at a nearby table to glance over. "This isn't a financial decision," Amara countered, trying to keep her voice down. "It didn't cost us anything. I'm trading my professional services." "Which have a monetary value," Daniel interrupted. "Time you could spend on paying clients. So I'm not allowed to do pro bono work now?" Amara felt her cheeks warming. This was not how she had imagined their anniversary dinner unfolding. The beautiful cake, meant to symbolize their enduring love despite past mistakes, now sat between them like evidence in a trial. "That's not what I said." Daniel took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm himself. "Look, I know you meant well. But with everything going on, the new house down payment, Jordan's tuition, the business struggling, I just wish you had talked to me first. About helping Mrs. Chen's nephew? Or about the cake? Because neither of those things cost us actual money, Daniel." A flicker of something, hurt perhaps or frustration, passed across Daniel's face. "It's not just about the cake, and you know it. Last month it was those expensive tickets to that law firm gala. Before that it was the new furniture for the living room that we absolutely needed, according to you. It all adds up, Amara." Amara stared at him, stunned by the sudden accounting of what he clearly perceived as her financial transgressions. "The gala was for work, networking is part of my job. And the furniture was on sale. We talked about both of those things." "No, you mentioned them as you were already doing them," Daniel corrected her. "That's not the same as discussing them together and deciding if they fit our budget." The manager approached again, perhaps sensing from their body language that the tension hadn't dissolved. "Is everything all right with the cake? Would you like to proceed with cutting it?" Daniel looked up, and something in his expression made Amara's stomach tighten. There was a coldness there she rarely saw, a hardness around his mouth. "Actually," Daniel said with forced politeness, "could you box it up for us? We'll take it home." The manager nodded, looking relieved to have a solution. "Of course, sir. Right away." As the manager walked away, Amara leaned forward. "Daniel, what are you doing?" "This was supposed to be a special moment. I think we need to finish this conversation at home," Daniel replied, already reaching for his wallet to pay the bill. "Unless you have another surprise arrangement for that too." The sarcasm in his voice stung. "No," Amara said quietly. "I was planning to pay for dinner. It is our anniversary after all." Daniel's jaw tightened as he counted out bills. "Fine. You pay for dinner and I'll handle the cake situation." The ride home was painfully silent. The boxed cake sat in the back seat, its presence a reminder of how quickly a well-intentioned surprise could go wrong. Amara stared out the window at the passing streetlights, wondering how they had gotten to this point. When had money become such a source of tension between them? When had Daniel started seeing her actions as irresponsible rather than generous or thoughtful? As they pulled into their driveway, Amara noticed their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, watering her late-blooming roses despite the evening hour. The older woman waved cheerfully, clearly unable to sense the tension radiating from their car. "Let's not bring this inside," Amara said as Daniel turned off the engine. "Can we just talk about it here and then try to salvage what's left of our anniversary?" Daniel's hands remained on the steering wheel, his knuckles white from gripping it too hard. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the cake or the furniture or the gala tickets. It's about respect." "Respect?" Amara repeated, incredulous. "How is surprising you with a meaningful gift disrespectful?" "It's disrespectful to make financial decisions, or arrangements that have financial implications, without consulting me, especially when you know we're under financial pressure," Daniel said. "It makes me feel like you don't trust my judgment, or worse, like you don't think our financial situation is serious." Amara turned in her seat to face him fully. Daniel, I work 60 hours a week. I just made partner. We are not in financial trouble. My business lost 3 major clients this year, Daniel said, his voice tight. The economy isn't doing well, and accounting is always the first service people cut back on. Jordan's tuition is more than we anticipated, because he didn't get that scholarship we were counting on. And the new house. The new house was your idea, Amara cut in. Because you hated our old neighborhood after the Richardsons moved away, Daniel countered. You kept talking about wanting to be in a better school district even though Jordan was already heading to college. For when we have another child, Amara said softly. It was a conversation they'd had many times over the years. The possibility of giving Jordan a sibling. Somehow the timing had never seemed right. Daniel's expression softened slightly. Amara, we can't afford another child right now. Not with everything else going on. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Amara felt tears stinging her eyes but refused to let them fall. So that's it? We're just giving up on that dream because your business had one bad year? Daniel sighed, rubbing his hand over his face. It's not just one bad year. It's been a slow decline for a while now. I've been trying to shield you from it to handle it myself, but I'm drowning here. The admission seemed to cost him something, as if saying the words out loud made them more real. Amara reached out to touch his arm, but he pulled away, reaching for the car door. Let's take the cake inside, he said, his voice flat. I'll get some coffee started. Amara watched as he got out of the car and opened the back door to retrieve the cake box. She sat there for a moment longer, trying to process everything. Daniel had been struggling financially and hadn't told her. He'd been carrying that burden alone, growing more resentful of what he perceived as her careless spending, while she had been oblivious, thinking her successful career was keeping them comfortably afloat. As she finally stepped out of the car and followed Daniel up the walkway to their home, Amara realized that the cake, her well-intentioned surprise, had inadvertently exposed cracks in their marriage that ran deeper than she had known. The question now was whether they could repair those cracks before they shattered everything they had built together. Inside the house, Daniel placed the cake box carefully on the kitchen counter. The elegant anniversary cake that had looked so perfect in the restaurant now seemed out of place in their kitchen, with its stack of mail on the counter and unwashed breakfast dishes in the sink. Neither of them had had time to clean up that morning. I'll make coffee, Daniel said, his voice still strained but softer than it had been in the car. Amara nodded, slipping off her heels and placing them by the door. Her feet ached, but the pain was nothing compared to the heaviness in her chest. 15 years of marriage, and somehow they had reached a point where they were keeping secrets from each other. She about the cake arrangement, he about his business troubles. As Daniel filled the coffee maker with water, Amara opened the cake box. It really was beautiful, exactly what they had wanted for their wedding day. Mrs. Chen had captured every detail from their original design, down to the tiny sugar flowers that matched their wedding bouquets. We should at least try it, Amara said. After all that drama, I want to know if it tastes as good as it looks. Daniel glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. Fine. Let me just get this coffee started. Amara found plates in the cabinet and a knife in the drawer. As she waited for Daniel, she checked her phone and saw a text from their friend Lena. Hope the anniversary surprise went well. Can't wait to hear all about it tomorrow. Amara put the phone down without responding. What would she even say? The surprise backfired completely and exposed how disconnected we've become. Daniel came over with 2 mugs of coffee. He looked at the cake, then at the knife in Amara's hand. Let me do it, he said, reaching for the knife. I've got it, Amara replied, already positioning the blade against the bottom tier. Amara, you're going to cut it wrong. You need to start at the top tier. That's for wedding cakes when you're saving the top for your first anniversary, Amara said. This isn't a wedding cake. It's supposed to be our wedding cake, Daniel pointed out. The one we should have had. Your words, Amara sighed. Does it really matter which tier we cut first? If we're doing this whole redo of our wedding cake, we might as well do it right, Daniel insisted, his tone becoming irritated again. Fine, Amara said, moving the knife to the top tier. Happy now? As she pressed the knife into the cake, Daniel suddenly said, Wait, we should take a picture first. For Jordan. Amara paused, knife halfway through the cake. Now you want a picture? 5 minutes ago you couldn't wait to get out of the restaurant. I just thought Jordan would like to see it, Daniel said defensively. He knows how much we always talked about that mixed-up wedding cake. The moment for pictures was at the restaurant, Amara said, continuing to cut the slice. When it was supposed to be a special surprise, not here in our kitchen after you turned it into another fight about money. I didn't turn it into a fight about money, Daniel said, his voice rising. You made a financial arrangement without telling me, and when I tried to talk to you about it, you got defensive. Because there was nothing to be defensive about. Amara placed the cake slice on a plate with more force than necessary, causing some of the frosting to smear. I did a favor for a client who did a favor for us. That's how the world works, Daniel. It's called building relationships. It's called taking advantage of your position, Daniel countered. And it's exactly the kind of thing that makes people think lawyers are. Don't, Amara warned, pointing the knife at him before catching herself and setting it down. Don't finish that sentence. They stared at each other across the counter, the beautiful cake sitting between them, one slice removed and looking somehow wounded on its plate. This isn't about the cake, Amara finally said, breaking the tense silence. And you know it. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Amara had seen countless times throughout their marriage, usually when he was at his most frustrated. No, it's not just about the cake. It's about you making decisions without me. It's about you assuming your way is the right way. It's about you. Stop saying you like this is all my fault, Amara interrupted. You're the one who kept your business problems a secret. You're the one who let me think everything was fine while you were drowning, as you put it, because I was trying to protect you. Daniel's voice rose again. I was trying to handle it myself so you wouldn't have to worry. I'm your wife, not your child, Amara said. We're supposed to face problems together. That's what marriage is, Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich coming from you. When was the last time you came to me with a problem at work? When was the last time you didn't just handle everything yourself and tell me about it afterward, if at all? The accusation hit close to home. Amara had always prided herself on her independence, on not burdening Daniel with her work stress or the everyday challenges she faced. But had that independence created distance between them? That's different, she said, but even to her own ears the defense sounded weak. It's not different at all, Daniel said. He picked up the cake slice Amara had cut and took a bite, chewing thoughtfully before adding, You're right about one thing, though. Mrs. Chen makes a damn good cake. The unexpected comment, delivered with such casualness in the middle of their argument, startled a laugh out of Amara. For a brief moment, the tension between them eased. Is it exactly how you imagined our wedding cake would taste? She asked, picking up her own fork. Daniel nodded, taking another bite. Better, actually. He looked at her over the cake. I'm sorry I ruined your surprise. I know you meant well. It was as close to an apology as she was likely to get, Amara knew, and part of her understood his frustration, especially now that she knew about his business struggles. I'm sorry, too, she said, for not telling you about the arrangement with Mrs. Chen, and for not noticing that you were under so much financial stress. Daniel set down his fork, his plate still half full. There's something else I need to tell you, he said, his voice suddenly serious again. Something I've been putting off. Amara felt her heart rate quicken. What is it? I might have to close the business, Daniel said, the words coming out in a rush. I've lost too many clients and the overhead is killing me. I've been thinking about looking for a job with one of the big accounting firms. The news hit Amara like a physical blow. Daniel's accounting business had been his pride and joy for 15 years. He had built it from nothing, had weathered economic downturns before. For him to consider closing it, why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked. We could have figured something out together. Like what? Would you have given up your partnership to help me save my failing business? The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. That's not fair, Amara said. I would have done whatever I could to help. I still will. There's nothing you can do, Daniel said, pushing his plate away. I've tried everything. The economy's bad, clients are cutting back, and bigger firms are undercutting my rates. It's over. It's not over until you actually close the doors, Amara insisted. Let me look at the books. Maybe there's something you've missed, some angle you haven't considered. Daniel's expression darkened again. There you go, thinking you know better than me. I'm an accountant, Amara. Do you really think I haven't gone over the numbers 1,000 times? I'm not saying you missed anything, Amara backtracked. I'm just saying a fresh pair of eyes might help. Or maybe I have contacts who could become new clients. I don't want your charity clients, Daniel snapped. I don't need you to save me. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and hurtful. Amara felt tears stinging her eyes again, and this time she didn't try to hold them back. One slipped down her cheek, then another. I never thought of you as someone who needed saving, she said quietly. I thought of us as partners. Two people facing life together. Daniel's expression softened at the sight of her tears. He reached across the counter as if to wipe them away, then seemed to think better of it and pulled his hand back. We should talk about this tomorrow, he said, when we're both calmer. But Amara knew that putting off difficult conversations was how they had ended up in this mess to begin with. No, we need to talk about it now, all of it. Your business, our finances, the new house, another baby, all the things we've been avoiding. Daniel shook his head. Not tonight. I can't do this tonight. He picked up his plate with the half-eaten cake and carried it to the trash, scraping the remaining cake into the bin with a finality that made Amara wince. What are you doing? She asked. I'm done with the cake, Daniel said simply. There's no need to waste it, Amara said, a fresh wave of hurt washing over her. The cake had meant something to her, a symbol of their resilience, of their ability to laugh at past mishaps and create new, better memories together. Daniel looked at her, then at the cake box on the counter, then back at her again. Something shifted in his expression, a hardening of his features that Amara had rarely seen. Time seemed to slow down as the cake flew through the air. Amara saw it coming but couldn't move fast enough to dodge. The soft, creamy mixture hit her directly in the face and chest, splattering across her burgundy dress and sliding down her skin in clumps. Vanilla frosting clung to her eyelashes and bits of cake crumbled down the front of her dress, leaving trails of buttercream in their wake. For a moment, the kitchen was completely silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to pause in shock. Daniel stood frozen, his hand still extended from the throw, his eyes wide with a mixture of anger and immediate regret. The enormity of what he'd just done was written all over his face. Amara blinked slowly, frosting falling from her eyelids as she did. She could taste the sweet vanilla on her lips, feel the sticky weight of it on her skin. Her beautiful anniversary dress was ruined. The cake she had so carefully arranged, the surprise she had been planning for weeks, was now smeared across her body. Daniel took a hesitant step forward, his anger already dissolving into horror. Amara, He stopped, clearly expecting tears or screaming or a retaliatory handful of cake thrown back at him. That's what would have happened in a movie, after all. The wronged wife would either break down in tears or fight back with equal force. But Amara did neither. Instead, she slowly raised her hand to her face and swiped a finger through the frosting on her cheek. She looked at it for a moment, then deliberately put her finger in her mouth, tasting the sweet frosting. You're right, she said quietly. Mrs. Chen really does make excellent cake. Daniel stared at her, confusion replacing his regret. What? Amara swiped another bit of frosting from her face and held her finger out to him. Try some. It's better when it's not thrown across the room. Daniel remained frozen, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected reaction. Go ahead, Amara urged, her voice steady, tentatively as if expecting a trap. Daniel leaned forward and tasted the frosting from her finger. His eyes never left hers, searching for the anger that should have been there but somehow wasn't. It's good, he agreed, his voice barely above a whisper, and then, to both their surprise, Amara started to laugh. It began as a small chuckle but quickly grew into full-blown, shoulder-shaking laughter. Cake fell from her face in clumps as her body shook, landing with soft plops on the kitchen floor. You should see your face right now, she managed between laughs. You look terrified. I am terrified, Daniel admitted. I just threw cake at you, at my wife, on our anniversary. He shook his head, disbelief at his own actions evident in his expression. What kind of person does that? The kind who's been under too much stress for too long, Amara said, her laughter subsiding but a smile still playing on her cake-covered lips. The kind who's been carrying a burden alone when he should have been sharing it. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, leaving streaks of frosting from his fingers. That's no excuse. I'm so sorry, Amara. I don't know what came over me. I do, Amara said, reaching for a paper towel to wipe some of the cake from her eyes. 15 years of marriage, and I still don't really listen sometimes. I hear the words, but I don't always hear what you're trying to tell me. Daniel watched her, confusion still evident on his face. Why aren't you furious? You should be furious. Oh, I'm definitely going to make you pay for this dress, Amara said, gesturing to the ruined burgundy fabric. And you're cleaning up this mess. She waved at the kitchen floor, now spotted with fallen cake. But right now I'm just... She paused, searching for the right word. Relieved, she finally said. Relieved? Daniel echoed incredulously. Amara nodded, wiping more cake from her face. For months, there's been this tension between us. This unspoken thing. You've been distant, I've been busy with work, we've both been walking on eggshells. And now it's all out in the open. Quite literally. She gestured to the cake splattered across the kitchen. I threw cake at you, Daniel said again, as if he still couldn't believe it. I would never. But you did, Amara said simply. And now we have to deal with it. With all of it. Your business problems, our money issues, the house, everything we've been avoiding talking about. Daniel sank onto one of the kitchen stools, the fight completely gone out of him. I've made such a mess of everything. Well, the kitchen certainly, Amara agreed, a hint of humor in her voice. She grabbed another paper towel and dampened it at the sink before handing it to him. You've got frosting in your hair. As Daniel wiped his hair, Amara looked down at her dress. It was beyond saving. The burgundy fabric was now a canvas of white frosting and yellow cake, the elegant silhouette ruined by clumps and smears. I'm going to change, she said, and then we're going to talk. Really talk? Daniel nodded, his eyes still full of remorse. I'll clean up in here. Amara headed toward their bedroom, leaving a trail of cake crumbs behind her. As she passed the hall mirror, she caught sight of her reflection and stopped short. The image was so absurd that she had to laugh again. Her carefully applied makeup was now hidden beneath layers of frosting, her elegant updo dotted with cake crumbs, her expensive dress a mess of dessert. She looked ridiculous. And yet strangely, she felt lighter than she had in months. The tension that had been building between them had finally broken, albeit in a way neither of them could have anticipated. In the bedroom, Amara carefully peeled off the ruined dress, setting it aside to see if it could be salvaged with professional cleaning. She stepped into the shower, watching as cake and frosting swirled down the drain. As the hot water washed away the sticky sweetness, she found herself thinking about the early days of their marriage. They had been so young, so full of dreams and plans. Daniel had just started his accounting business, working out of a tiny office with second-hand furniture. Amara had been a new lawyer, working long hours and taking on any case that came her way. They had supported each other, celebrated each small victory together, faced every setback as a team. When had they started hiding things from each other? When had they begun carrying their burdens alone? By the time Amara stepped out of the shower, her skin pink from the hot water, she had made a decision. She wrapped herself in a towel and wiped steam from the bathroom mirror, looking at her reflection. Without makeup, with her hair wet and slicked back, she looked younger somehow. More like the woman who had stood beside Daniel 15 years ago, promising to face life together. She dressed in comfortable clothes, soft sweatpants and one of Daniel's old t-shirts, and headed back to the kitchen, prepared for a difficult but necessary conversation. To her surprise, Daniel wasn't cleaning up the mess as she had expected. Instead, he was sitting at the counter, staring at his phone with an odd expression on his face. What is it? Amara asked. Daniel looked up, his eyes wide. Mrs. Patterson texted me. She saw us arguing in the car when we got home and wanted to check if everything was okay. That's nice of her, I guess, Amara said, not understanding his strange expression. What did you tell her? I didn't respond yet, Daniel said. But that's not the weird part. Look at this, he held out his phone. On the screen was a social media post from one of the other diners at the restaurant. It showed Amara and Daniel at their table, the beautiful cake between them, both of them looking tense. The caption read, "Witnessing what might be the most awkward anniversary dinner ever. Beautiful cake, though. Restaurant drama, anniversary gone wrong." Amara's hand flew to her mouth. Someone posted about us? That's invasive. Keep scrolling, Daniel said. Amara swiped through more photos. There was one of Daniel looking upset as the manager tried to cut the cake. Another of Amara's clearly forced smile as they asked for it to be boxed up instead. The final image showed them leaving, Daniel carrying the cake box, both of their faces tight with tension. Great, Amara sighed. Now we're trending as the couple with the worst anniversary ever. Actually, Daniel said, taking the phone back, we've got a bunch of supportive comments. people sharing their own anniversary disaster stories. He scrolled through the comments, reading a few aloud. My husband forgot our anniversary entirely and took me to a baseball game instead. We got food poisoning from our anniversary dinner and spent the night in the ER. My wife's ex showed up at our table to return a sweater in the middle of our anniversary dinner. Despite herself, Amara smiled. I guess we're not the only ones who don't have picture-perfect anniversaries. Not by a long shot, Daniel agreed. He set the phone down and finally looked around at the cake-spattered kitchen. I should really clean this up. 3 months passed since the night of flying cake and difficult truths. The kitchen had been cleaned. The burgundy dress had been professionally treated, though a faint frosting stain remained as a permanent reminder. And most importantly, Amara and Daniel had begun the slow work of rebuilding what had been cracking beneath the surface of their marriage for years. It started that night, sitting at their kitchen table until nearly dawn, talking more honestly than they had in years. Daniel laid out the full extent of his business troubles, the lost clients, the mounting debts, the failed attempts to bring in new accounts. Amara shared her own anxieties, the pressure of her new partnership, her fears about their growing distance, her lingering hope for another child despite the passing years. The next day, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep but somehow lighter, they began making plans, real plans together. We need to look at everything, Amara had insisted, spreading their financial documents across the dining room table. No more separate accounts, no more you handling this and me handling that. Everything on the table, and so they did. Daniel showed her exactly how bad things had gotten with his business. Amara reviewed their household expenses, identifying places they could cut back. Together, they made a list of potential new clients from Amara's professional network who might need accounting services. Now, 3 months later, they sat in that same dining room, but the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the small vase of flowers in the center of the table. Not an expensive bouquet, but wildflowers Daniel had picked from the side of the road on his way home from a meeting with a new client. That's the third new account this month, Daniel said, unable to keep the pride from his voice as he showed Amara the signed contract. If things keep going this way, I might need to hire an assistant by summer. Amara smiled, genuinely happy for him. I told you Mrs. Rivera would sign. She's been looking for a new accountant since that mess with her last tax filing. I still can't believe how many of your clients needed accounting help, Daniel said, shaking his head in wonder. It's like this obvious connection was sitting right in front of us for years. We weren't looking for it before, Amara pointed out. We were too busy keeping our work lives separate, thinking that was the right thing to do. It had been her idea initially. When Daniel's existing clients started leaving, Amara suggested a simple solution. What if they leveraged her client relationships? Many of her legal clients were small business owners or professionals who might need accounting services. Within weeks, Daniel had 5 new clients from Amara's referrals. By the second month, that number had doubled. In return, Daniel had taken over their household finances, creating a budget that accounted for their current situation while planning for future goals. The spreadsheet was color-coded and detailed, tracking everything from daily coffee purchases to retirement contributions. Have you checked social media lately? Daniel asked, setting the contract aside and pulling out his phone. Amara groaned. Not again. I thought that would have died down by now. After their anniversary dinner disaster, the photos of their tense exchange had indeed gone viral. But what had really captured people's attention was what happened next. Mrs. Patterson, their well-meaning but somewhat nosy neighbor, had been more than just concerned when she texted Daniel that night. She had actually walked over to check on them, arriving at their front door just in time to witness Amara, covered in cake, laughing in the kitchen, confused but relieved. Mrs. Patterson had taken a quick photo through the window to document that everything was okay, she later claimed, and posted it alongside the restaurant photos someone had shared with her. The image of cake-covered Amara laughing while Daniel looked bewildered had struck a chord with people. The contrast between the tense restaurant photos and the unexpected aftermath became a story that resonated far beyond their small community. Look at this, Daniel said, showing her his screen. Someone made a relationship advice post titled The Cake Method. It says when you're having a serious argument with your spouse, imagine how you'd react if they threw cake at you. If you can picture yourself eventually laughing about it, the problem is probably fixable. Amara couldn't help smiling. Well, at least something good came out of your momentary insanity. I still can't believe I did that, Daniel said, shaking his head. Or that you didn't divorce me on the spot. It crossed my mind, Amara admitted. For about half a second. But then I realized something. What's that? In 15 years of marriage, that was the first time you'd ever completely lost control. You're always so measured, so careful. It made me realize just how much pressure you must have been under, how desperate you must have felt. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. That's still no excuse. No, Amara agreed. It's not. But it was a wake-up call we both needed. Their moment was interrupted by the ringing of the doorbell. Amara checked her watch and stood up. That'll be the photographer. Daniel looked confused. Photographer? For what? Amara smiled mysteriously. You'll see. Why don't you change into something nice? That blue shirt I got you for Christmas would be perfect. 30 minutes later, they stood in their backyard, which had been transformed over the past week. Twinkling lights hung from the old oak tree. A small arch decorated with autumn leaves and flowers stood on the grass. A handful of their closest friends had arrived and were arranging chairs in a semicircle. What is all this? Daniel asked, looking around in wonder. A do-over, Amara said simply. Not just of the cake, but of some promises I think we both need to remember. From inside the house, their son Jordan emerged, home from college for the weekend. Behind him came Mrs. Chen, carrying a cake box that looked suspiciously familiar. You didn't, Daniel said, turning to Amara with wide eyes. I did, she confirmed. But don't worry. This one is for eating, not throwing. Mrs. Chen set the cake on a table that had been decorated with photos of Amara and Daniel throughout their 15 years together. It was identical to the anniversary cake, 3 tiers of elegant ivory frosting with delicate autumn leaves cascading down the sides. I don't understand, Daniel said. What is all this for? Jordan stepped forward, grinning. Mom thought you guys might want to renew your vows. After the whole cake fiasco went viral, she said it was time for a better memory to replace it. Renew our vows? Daniel repeated, looking at Amara with surprise. Today, right now? Amara nodded, suddenly feeling nervous. Only if you want to. I know it's not a big fancy ceremony like some people do for renewals, but I thought something small, with just the people who matter most. She trailed off, uncertain now if she had overstepped. Perhaps Daniel wasn't ready for this public recommitment, even in front of just a few friends. But then Daniel smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes in a way she hadn't seen in too long. It's perfect, he said. Absolutely perfect. As their small group of friends took their seats, Amara and Daniel stood beneath the arch. Their neighbor, Mr. Garcia, who was ordained, stood before them with a worn copy of vows Amara had hastily printed that morning. 15 years ago, Mr. Garcia began, these two made promises to each other. Today, they're here to remind us all that promises sometimes need to be renewed, especially the ones worth keeping. Daniel squeezed Amara's hand as Mr. Garcia continued. When it came time to speak their vows, Daniel went first, his voice steady and sure. Amara, I promise to share my burdens with you, not just my joys. To remember that we're strongest when we face life as partners. And I promise. Here he paused, a mischievous glint in his eye. To never throw cake at you again, no matter how heated our arguments get. Laughter rippled through their small audience. Even Mrs. Chen, who had only heard the story secondhand, chuckled appreciatively. When it was Amara's turn, she found herself fighting unexpected tears. Daniel, I promise to listen not just to your words, but to what you're really saying. To remember that our marriage comes first before work or pride or anything else. And I promise, she matched his playful tone, to always have a sense of humor, even when life gets messy. After they had exchanged new rings, simple bands that fit their revised budget, Mr. Garcia pronounced them still husband and wife. Their friends applauded. Jordan whooped loudly, and Mrs. Chen brought forward the cake for a proper cutting. As Daniel carefully fed Amara the first bite, their friends captured the moment on their phones. Within hours, these photos too would be shared alongside the original viral posts, creating a before and after story that would inspire countless couples facing their own relationship challenges. Later, as the small celebration wound down and their guests began to leave, Amara and Daniel stood in their backyard, arms around each other's waists, looking up at the stars beginning to appear in the early evening sky. Thank you, Daniel said softly, for not giving up on us. Never, Amara replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. We're in this for the long haul, cake fights and all. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the darkening sky, too quick to wish upon but bright enough to remind them that even in darkness there is always light to be found.